Hey, good day, everybody. Welcome back to Beyond the Seven, live from Jerusalem with Rabbi David Poston, who has been teaching us for quite a while now. We've been going through the 48 Ways to Wisdom by Rav Noah Weinberg of blessed memory, and Rabbi Poston was one of his students, so nobody better to share the material with us. And last week's class was excellent on making others meritorious, and I know he's got an even better one for us today, and I think that this course keeps ramping up with more and more wonderful things that we can acquire and integrate into our life to draw closer to Hashem. And I encourage everybody to go back, check every one of these out. Each one of them will have a distinct message for an attribute you can work into your life. They're just beautiful, and I'm so thankful that Rabbi Poston takes time out of his busy schedule to share with us. So let's just jump right in and see how the rabbi's doing tonight in Jerusalem. Shalom, Rabbi. We know Hanukkah's coming tomorrow. You're going to have a very busy week, I'm sure, in Jerusalem.
Yeah, Shavua Tov. Thank you, Dan. Yeah, we're looking forward to Hanukkah. And yeah, I'm just glad to be back. And I just want to let everyone know this is part of a long series, right? With 48 Ways to Wisdom. And we're on
41 now. We're doing well. We're getting through her.
But I just want to, it's like a disclaimer, right? Because I want everyone who's listening and really enjoys the series to go and see the book, which is over my left shoulder.
Deeper,
either the book itself or go online to h.com, right. And you can do a search for the 48 Ways. You can get very similar to the book, pretty much chapter for chapter, but it's been revised a little bit. So there's the book, there's the video recordings as well, which you can find on the website, or there are actually quite a few other students who have also spoken about these 48 ways, and nothing to do with Eish Torah per se, not necessarily. You know, the Rosh Hashiva, Rav Noah Weinberg was the Rosh Hashiva of Eish Torah, but this is all ancient Jewish wisdom based on the Mishnah and Pirkei Avot. And Jews all over the world have written about it and spoken about it
for millennia.
And I don't feel that I could, I really justify. So what we're doing here is really just scratching the surface, getting people interested in what the
perfect level for B'nai Noach, though, beyond the seven. Let them realize that there's much more beauty there.
That's for sure. That's for sure. So tonight's topic, even though it's called in Hebrew, Ma'amido ala emes, which is really hard to translate in a single fashion way, but it could mean standing up for truth. It could mean standing firmly, getting into reality. So basically, he translates it for the sake of this chapter, living in reality.
Keeping it real.
Keeping it real. That's great. That's great. There's a famous set of books called Strive for Truth. Rabbi Dessler, one of the Rosh Hashivas of last generation, 2 generations ago in Gateshead, it's called Strive for Truth, or Miktav Me Eliyahu in Hebrew, which just means the letters of Elijah, but based on his name. But it was translated to Strive for Truth. So we're talking about, how do we say this? Many people are living in an illusion, and it's their fault. I mean, part of it's society, the way we were brought up. But let's say as you're training to be a rabbi, so one of the things that when you're asked questions or there's a quarrel, right? You have people who need a resolution and they're in front of you, like King Solomon, right? The famous story of King Solomon. What did he do? This woman says, this baby's mine. And if everyone knows the story, I don't have to give so much background, right? For those who are not familiar, I'll quickly go through it. Unfortunately, a woman was nursing her baby in the middle of the night. I think she squished the baby, whatever it was. The baby had passed away. And apparently she traded her dead baby for a live baby of the other woman. And they come before the King Solomon, who is a judge, just a very smart man, one of the smartest men that ever lived. And the famous story is, how is he going to decide who's the real mother? Because each one is claiming that the the live baby is theirs, right?
Right.
Obviously, one is telling the truth and one is lying. So, what did he say? He came up with this idea. Okay, let's just cut the baby in half. And he wanted to see the reaction of the real mother. So let's just say the fake mother says, "Yeah, yeah, okay." I mean, I don't know how she came up with that solution, but what can she do? But the real mother says, "No, no, no. Listen, it's really my baby, but let the baby live. Let this fake mother hold on to the baby than have my own baby die." And so, whatever the exact words were, King Solomon realized who the real mother was, striving for truth, to get to the real truth. How do you know the truth? How does anybody know the truth? And I think that this is a dilemma that every human being, right, Jew and non-Jew alike.
Yeah. What's
And
the
I'm going to say
baseline
this.
standard? Yeah. We try to think Torah for sure.
I'm going to assume, I could be totally wrong about this, that it's probably a bigger dilemma for non-Jews. But with that being said, in other words, if you're brought up in a home where, in a home, a Jewish home should be a place where, yes, we do tell the truth to our children, right? But we also allow them. That's something that is so fantastic. I'm going to use the word fantastical. It's absolutely fantastical that we encourage questions, that the child, as he's growing up or she's growing up, understands the other side, and then you tear apart, the fallacies. And that's what happens in a Jewish chavruta. When you're learning, you learn with a partner, and each one is basically sharpening their sword, so to speak, right? Sharpening the knives. You need to sharpen your own wit. You need to sharpen your own, stance against the other person, and be honest. That's going to be the main thing, because when you hear the fallacy in your own argument, then you realize the other person is giving a more correct reasoning or rendition or reading of whatever it is you're trying to decipher. So I think from a religious Jewish home with a proper Torah upbringing, you are going to encourage this type of learning, where you have to be brutally honest and stand down when there's no ego involved, right? You just want to get to the truth. And that's what you're taught, because that's what Abraham did, right? Abraham stood for what he was, let's just say, the truth. He left a place of illusion. That's how we describe
Fantasy. Yeah.
Babylonia, right? Babylon. And he came to Eretz Israel, which is a land of clarity, okay, a brutal honesty. And that's what he represents, and that's what he instilled, hopefully, into his children. And so I would believe that, at least the religious Jews that I'm around, this is how you bring up your children. And I hope I did a good job with mine. But anyway, so the question is, when you're taught, oh, there's such a thing as Santa Claus, and you're not told until, I don't know what age. I can't even imagine. Maybe they never even tell them that Santa Claus doesn't exist. I have no idea. But at some point, you realize that it's all lies, right? As
That front, here in Canada, to patronize the LGBTQ community, they've got a new book out this year. Santa Claus Has a Boyfriend. I mean, talk about fantasy. I mean,
look, without getting banned from Facebook, without talking about too many things that are controversial, and the reason, yes, we believe there's truth, but there's also compromise. Keep in mind that we have a very important message, and it's not worth, getting banned from Facebook, because everyone knows if they want to really speak the truth, you do it in private. Sometimes, right? My Rabbi told me, some things you think, you don't say, and some things you say, you don't put into print, and some things you print, you don't publish. It's
right,
not. So
right.
you have to have patience. Okay, we're not. We have to stand up for truth, and there's going to be times where you have to. Okay, you have to go out on the limb and put everything at risk. But in the meantime, I just want to mention about these groups that you mentioned, without mentioning the names of these groups. Or maybe I have to say certain things. We all know that in terms of science, in terms of biology, there are basically, I mean, I don't even know the binary idea. There are two genders. There really are. Not 75 or a million and two. And not only that, but there are grades in between. We have to admit that. I mean, science, there are children, babies who are born with multiple limbs or right in all kinds of chemical um, disturbances with variations. But we're talking about the norm, okay?
Right.
So at least when you're looking at science and there's no ego involved, so then you will see the truth.
Black and white.
Okay. And of course, there are going to be gradations. But anyway, that's going to be an issue. I'm not going to deny that. But basically, when you're dealing with objectivity, there has to be a certain amount of objectivity in this world, right? In other words, you're going to strive for truth or stand up for what's true. So the only way you can really do that is if you are objective and you take the ego and put it outside. And in terms of like, what's the word? We're talking about gaining wisdom, acquiring wisdom. So when you have your ego involved, it's the biggest impediment to getting to the truth. We talked before many times about a word called cognitive dissonance. Okay, people can look it up. How do you spell it? Like it sounds. Cognitive, which is probably the easy word to figure out, and dissonance. I believe that's how it's pronounced.
Yeah, DISS.
Then you can have, you can have all the evidence staring you in the face, and that's what you need, evidence when you're looking for truth. And they talk about emotion. So the emotion or the emotional response, something deep rooted that's preventing you from seeing or let's say accepting the truth. I'm going to just simply call that ego. Obviously, it's probably much more complicated than that.
It becomes subjective.
So the idea of, let's just say, a rabbi has to be trying to get to the truth of truths. That's the bottom line. You have to get to. So what about the laymen, the lay people? Well, also, you're living your life. Let me just ask you a question. Rabbi Matti Berger from Aish Torah gave a famous lecture series, and it basically goes like this. Is there a God? And you could say, okay, maybe, yeah, maybe no, whatever. Is there a God? But if there is, right, is it going to make a difference in my life? In other words, is there a God, and what's the difference? Does it really matter? You know that it does, right? I'm talking about how you speak, how you act, how you think, right? Especially how you act, right? All this is going to make a huge difference. So you do want to get to the truth. You need to get to the truth. So in other words, if this is a way to acquire wisdom, I think we need to discuss the honesty part, the getting rid of the ego part, the knowing and recognizing where your emotions are taking you, having a strong pull. And just being aware of that is, I think, the first step. So if you take a look at the words, ma'amido ala emes, to stand up or living in reality, standing up for truth, living in reality, the problem is, meaning the opposite, is the illusions, all these illusions. And something we say in Judaism is, this world is an illusion. It's full of illusions. So we have to figure out what are those illusions and try to stay away from them. I have so much here to cover. I had a friend. I still have a friend, Baruch Hashem. I don't want to mention his name, but I'll call him SF. Okay, if he's ever watching this, he'll know. So he was diagnosed with cancer. Now, this person, when I had met him in Jerusalem, he had told me about, as he went through life, he went through such sorrows, a lot of pain with relationships, as well as health issues. He had brain surgery, he had stomach surgery, he had all kinds of surgeries that the doctors told him he wouldn't survive, and yet he did. And anyway, so I don't know how many years ago, 7, 8 years ago, he was diagnosed with cancer, and they told him, who are they? Whoever they are, right? These doctors told him that he had 6 months to live. That's it. I don't think more than that. And the truth is, it could have been 10 years ago, but it was over 7 years ago, somewhere between 7 and 10 years ago. And I didn't know how to react. How do you react to someone that tells you that the doctors just told you you have 6 months to live. You're not going to live longer than that. So I prayed on it. I really thought about it. And I'm not even sure I said the right thing, but I'll tell you what I said to him. And he did appreciate it. And I think he still appreciates it to this day. This guy's going to outlive us all. I said to him with tears in my eyes and a choking up, saying how lucky he was. You are so lucky, because all of us are living in an illusion that we're going to live forever. And here it is. I mean, I don't believe the doctors, but let's just say, you give some credibility to them. So what are they saying? They're saying that you're going to die. Well, you're walking around knowing that, and we're all walking around not knowing that. Meaning, forget about the 6 months, but they told you you're going to die, and you're living with that idea. And you know what he did? He took a certain amount of money, and he took, I don't know how you call it, cruises. He went and saw the world. And the guy is still alive to this day, and he wrote books, and he's helping people. He's so involved with people, and he's like just such a sweet guy. And I tell you the truth. I mean, again, if he's listening, I hope he's not going to take it personally. He was a little bit of a difficult personality, a little bit. And I'm going to tell you, he softened up. He's even more sweeter than he was then. He's just a terrific guy. Anyway, so that's my experience with one person who, I guess we all live in this, especially now. Again, I don't want to get too political, but there are certain people who walk around thinking that if they get a jab of some sort, they're going to live forever. Okay.
Oh yeah, but there are some of those that think if they don't get it, they're yeah.
So
I think they're going to die if they get it. Some of them, it's yeah.
Okay, like I said, I don't want to get too political, but there is this, reliance on medicine, the reliance on certain pills or certain procedures that is going to change their life forever and keep them. And that's an illusion. Like you said, if you want to say the other extreme is also an illusion. Okay, so what do we always face with? Evidence, right? And especially in this situation, nobody knows what to believe. Right? Because the evidence we all know from both sides, there's someone who has an agenda somewhere.
Yeah.
So the question is, which one is more plausible? Okay, without getting into anything too political, we just have to realize that we do need to investigate evidence as best as we can, and realize when there are people that are presenting the evidence that have flesh in the game, so to speak. And I'll use the word big pharma, right? Whatever that means, right? And there were always people, doctors, who were anti-establishment, right? They were anti-big pharma. That was their whole deal. And you know what? They're having a field day. So you have the two extremes. Their agenda's like they're hot to try. They're ready to go to spill it all and make it like real for everybody. But the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. Now, also a thing called relative, right? We're talking what we call relative reality. Unfortunately, as you already mentioned about this alphabet soup, right? That there is no reality. It's like whatever you make it, and that's also not. It means you're basically saying there is no such thing as objective or absolute reality or absolute truth.
Yeah, there's no ground to walk on.
Right. So we're going to get to that point. That's also a major problem for this generation,
right?
Where
subjectivity.
They don't believe at all in absolute truth. I described before how in Judaism, we already discussed it now, how you have a chavrusa system, but let's say even a chabura, you have 3 or 4 people sitting around talking about what is absolute truth. So I gave the example, you have a bottle. Take a bottle of, I don't know, healthy apple juice, okay? But either way, it has a label, and it's sitting in the middle of the table, and everyone's looking at it from their angle. And we want to conclude what is the absolute truth about this particular bottle, which each one of these 5 people is only seeing, even though you would say 20% of input is coming from each one is seeing 180 degrees, right? Up until whatever is behind the bottle, they cannot see. So each
they're
one
in 3D reality, sure.
Each one will describe what they see. Each one is not describing absolute reality. It's impossible because there's some things beyond them they cannot see or perceive. But when you have all five people looking at whatever we're going to say, 20% of it, well, it's really 180 degrees each one, but 20% vision out of the five people, each one is seeing something different. But if you put it all together, they will come closer when they describe what it is that each one sees,
rather than on their own.
To a absolute reality. Now, is it absolute still? You have what's underneath, you have what's above, you have what's inside. You still don't come to a 100%,
sure,
but you are closer. And this is the way to go. So you realize there is something called relative reality, but it's based on reality of a certain perception. So when you have this dialogue, hopefully you will get to, because you have to know there is such a thing as objective and subjective reality, and you want to go with the objective reality as much as you can to stand up for something, because if you don't stand up for it, you stand up for nothing. We used to say in our yeshiva days when we first, back 30 some years ago, right? Oh yeah, I'm open-minded, right? There's like a big joke. You're so open-minded that your brains will fall out on the ground, right? Okay, you have to be open-minded. There's no question about it. But again, it's the evidence, not just a fluting thing. Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty of everything. So the Rosh Yeshiva wants to let us know it's not just about you, it's about setting it straight for others. If we actually go back to some of the ideas in the last few chapters, right? Love correcting other people, right? Giving tochacha. It's also for yourself, but you feel there's a responsibility to give rebuke to others. Carrying the burden, right? You feel the responsibility, okay? Judging others favorably, meaning helping them move in the right direction, even metaphysically and spiritually in that sense. And this idea of setting someone else, it's not just yourself, helping others see reality. It's all part of this, let's say, a subset of these groups of midot.
Well, you never want to mislead knowingly, that's for sure.
Right. But the main thing is they all start with yourself, right? They always start with, if you can't do it yourself, how are you expected? How can you really help anybody else? So this is the idea. Most of us, a lot of us, at times, we live a life filled with illusions. What we need to do is get ourselves straight, get rooted in reality. And once we are in that position where we're as close to reality as possible, we can certainly help others, and we should feel the responsibility to do so. Now, instead of running away from your problems, this is the idea. Love life. Life is full of, yes, challenges, but accomplishments, right? And you should feel that way.
Yeah.
And you should look every morning to conquer whatever challenges are coming your way. But this is one of the ideas, to achieve genuine greatness instead of living in a fog of self-delusion. I mean, we're talking about reality here, okay? And not, there's some people that are way out there. And we'll talk about how insanity itself is also contagious. Okay, so unfortunately, we do run into people, maybe ourselves included, where we have such a muddled idea, a self-perception of ourselves. Some of us are depressed. We think we're weak. We think we're no good. And I can just imagine people brought up in Christianity. Look, it's everybody. We're all human. We're all flesh and blood, and we all have trauma growing up, and we have daddy issues and mommy issues, and right, self-esteem issues. But if you were taught, if you were taught that you are evil from your youth, right, and sex is bad and dirty, and you were born in sin, and the only way you're going to find any salvation is through whatever these other religions. I mean, what kind of, I don't know, what can you accomplish in this world, right? But when you're taught that your soul is pure, and God, yes, He gives you challenges, right? And you have a Yetzer Hara and a Yetzer Tov. You have a constant, we'll call it a battle, of internal battle. of making choices. And God wants you to choose good. He knows you can choose good, and He loves you, and He's giving you opportunities after opportunities to do good. And He's giving you the strength to do good. I think it just sets you off on a whole nother wavelength of life. It's called positivity. I mean, it's okay, but so I can imagine that people who are brought up, especially in Christian homes, maybe even Muslims' homes, that have totally submissive to certain ideas. Anyway, that one should feel good, right? Getting up in the morning and ready to tackle the next opportunity. Um, so, like when you help people, so you have to be objective, right? And that's usually the case, right? When you're experiencing your own problems, a lot of times you're very subjective, but when you're when you're a friend listening to your friend, right, listening to a friend who's complaining or whatever, as an outsider, there's a little bit more objectivity. So hopefully, through helping other people, and you're consistently, hopefully, being objective, that should help you in your own life. In other words, even like in the 12-step programs that we've spoken about so much, that doing 12-step work as not a graduate, you never graduate, but let's say as someone who already went through the first 11 steps, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of those steps helps other people. You're consistently helping other people. It's because that will help you stay objective for yourself. So in other words, helping others is, I mean, it's like where does the wheel begin, right? Was it the chicken or the egg? But hopefully by the 12th step, you have experienced a tremendous amount of rigorous honesty. For those who are not familiar, a lot of the steps have to do with this an accounting of your soul, looking at your motives, looking at your actions, how you've hurt people, making amends, right? The willingness and the desire
Yeah,
to
real
change,
change of heart stuff.
for sure. So hopefully, after having already gone through that, you have an idea what it means to be honest with yourself, and therefore you're helping others. And by constantly helping others, hopefully you're like in this in the rhythm of being honest and objective with yourself. So that's you can see why this also is a way to acquire wisdom, standing up for the truth. Okay, not letting your I don't know your friend lie to himself, right? Kid himself. Um, whether it's he's experiencing, as we say, cognitive dissonance, or he's just living an illusion. You want to wake him up to reality, but how? You have to do with loving kindness. Um, when you're
Well
trying
said.
to help somebody, you don't want to just do a cosmetic make it
Patch. Yeah.
you want to make it, yeah, you don't want that just a patch, because the patch is going to fall off eventually. You want to help that person make these real changes in their life. So you're listening to them, and listening is so important when you're trying to help somebody. I do catch myself, I'm sure we all do. We're so excited about having this new relationship, but really, if the other person is experiencing pain, let them talk. It's going to help you being able to help them by letting them talk. Basically, you want to get to the root of the problem. I recently had, I don't know why, I do get people who, uh, I don't want to say a lot of people, but probably more than most, people who are suicidal, or people who claim that their friend is suicidal. When you finally meet them, they're not suicidal at all. They're just going through some, major issues, and they're very depressed and they're very down. But the last person I dealt with, I I was pretty sure that they weren't suicidal, but it doesn't matter. I mean, you're talking about life or death, so you take it seriously, and you treat them with kid gloves in the beginning. And I said to the friend that wanted me to be involved in trying to help this person, actually, the person themselves said they wanted help. They wanted to talk to a rabbi who's going to explain to them why suicide is forbidden according to Torah law. And I thought that's very strange. This person, that's not what's bothering them. That cannot even be close to reality. That they want to talk to a rabbi who's going to convince them there's something else really going on. And I want to get to the bottom of it. I want to get to the root of it.
Good for you.
And And I realized very early on in our conversations that this person is hurting so bad that their whole life they created an illusion, momish an illusion. I don't want to go into too many details because
Structure is not real. It's yeah.
an absolute illusion about who they were, their identity, and everything about it. And I knew it from the very beginning. And later on,
The arrogance works that
he
way too,
actually
doesn't it, Rabbi? Yeah.
totally, totally. The ego was so big, and this person wanted to live more than anything else, you know. But they created such a trap for themselves, this illusion that they were going to get found out. Anyway, let's move on. This is something that we need to help people get to the root of their problem. So it's not easy. I remember when I first became religious, I heard this from Rav Yochanan Zwei, you should live and be well, in Miami Beach. He said that if you come to a place, and let's say you're a repairman, and you're asked, let's take a refrigerator, and you're asked to repair it. Well, first you have to find out what's wrong with it. So if you come in thinking you already know what's wrong with it, you're probably not going to find out what's wrong with it because your mind is fixated and it's not able to see. It's too subjective.
Yep. Proper diagnosis is yeah.
It takes a lot of objectivity, which means the ego cannot be there. You're looking at it with fresh eyes, and eventually you'll find it, but how quickly?
Yeah, and at what expense?
And at what expense?
Yeah, you don't want to replace the compressor if it needs something else.
So when the person, a human being, which is much more complicated than any refrigerator, even the most modern high-tech fridges, a human being is just beyond that. It takes a lot of objectivity. Another thing they say about rabbis is you really need to learn a lot of psychology. Now, I don't know if it's book psychology or street psychology or just as you take on the responsibilities of people that you'll figure it out. But basically, it's very true. So basically, you want to find out what it is that they're missing, what you like hope and pray to God that you'll say the right things that will change their life for the better. And I think that, but I think you have to pray. I think besides whatever books you can learn from or people you can learn from, it takes a lot of, we call siyata d'shmaya, a tremendous amount of assistance from Hashem to be able to help people. You have to submit yourself to say, I want to help this person. I need to see the truth. I need to be out. I need to get my own ego out of the way. And it's a real request from Hashem with every person you meet. Because as soon as you walk in there with any kind of subjectivity, how can you possibly help them? You've already, labeled them or nailed the problem. And I'm not going to say you're wrong, but in a lot of cases, you're probably not right. And it takes a lot more time than just looking at somebody and say, oh, I know what their problem is, right? So,
Be thorough and be real, yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's just so much to talk about. Anyway, he mentions a few examples here. So about a father and a teenager, right? We all know they're pretty difficult ages. But imagine the father of a teenager is frustrated his son doesn't listen to his advice. Well, wow. Okay. So at home, there's constant tension and fighting between the two. The father has no idea how to communicate with his son and get him to listen. So what solution can you suggest to the father? I mean, come on. Listen, we hopefully would be more objective, right? So we would simply tell him, right, that stop telling your kid what to do. I mean, what's the father supposed to do? You have to tell them, right? I mean, you're talking about God gave you this important life, and if this, if you don't do your job,
but it's not rational to hold them to full adult standards, is it?
No, for sure not. But one of the ideas is to be an example, right? If you feel your child's not listening to you, you have to examine yourself. Okay, that's just one of the things you want to tell a father who feels his kid's not listening to him. And it's usually the case. I'm not saying it's full-blown hypocrisy, but let's just take, a Jewish example of a kid in shul. Let's say the kid is not paying attention and doing his, maybe he's ADD, maybe he's got ADHD, maybe he's got all kinds of other issues. But let's just take a normal case, simple case. If the father's looking at his cell phone during prayers, or the father's, I don't know, just looking around, or the father's always late for shul. So if the father's trying to tell the son how important it is to be on time or to be attentive, just to look in the book. Well, what's the father doing? Right? If the father's not looking in his book and he's not paying attention to what he's supposed to pay attention to, so how do you expect the kid to? So that could be a very objective thing. And usually, I'm not going to say it's always the case, but a lot of times it really is the case. So let's just see. And basically, the father is in an illusion, right? To think that he's not even part of the problem, right? He's going to be part of the solution. Here's another example. Okay, it's not a very nice example, but let's just use it. It's a theoretical example. Okay, so let's say a son who's really, doesn't feel his father loves him, right? Yeah. So he comes to the rabbi. So the rabbi's going to say, listen, let's say you were traveling in Europe. Okay, you were by yourself, maybe with a few friends, I don't know, but you end up in a hospital because of who knows what. It could have been an infection. It could have been hit by a car. But whatever it is, you're flat on the back in a hospital bed. Who do you think is going to travel 5,000 miles to come and see you and be in your bed? Right? You think your father hates you? You have all kinds of resentments against your father. He's the only one that's going to be there for you. Okay, maybe the mother, but I'm just saying, like either way, it's the mother or the father, and you have this I don't know, this illusion. It's an illusion of animosity. So it goes both ways, right? The father thinks he's not listening to me because you're not acting. The truth is, you're not acting proper. And the kid thinks his father hates him, but the truth is, the father really loves him more than anybody else on the entire planet. So we want to help people, like, wake up to reality, smell the coffee. This is the truth. But we're all living in our own daydreams and our own illusions.
Far too often, yeah.
Yeah, far too often. So I'll just read the last line here. Understanding people's problems and helping them solve them is a very difficult endeavor. Every person is different and complicated. It takes time, patience, and commitment, but the efforts are well worth it. So just keep this in mind, right? To help people, you have to be objective. You have to be able to zone in on the truth. And the only way to do that is really to get rid of the ego and try to be as objective as possible. Now, personalizing problem solving. In order to help others get into reality, you need to become a truth seeker yourself. You need and eliminate your own internal fuzziness and blind spots, which mask reality and breed ignorance, which is an interesting idea. Do you know that life is beautiful? I mean, if I would tell this to some of these people I work with, oh, they just have a list of complaints. Oh, no. That's the illusion, right? That life is not beautiful. And how do you break that? But we have to do it ourselves. We have to start with ourselves. We have to know that life is beautiful, right? And proclaim it, right? Seek to understand the meaning of life, to identify where you are lacking, and to discover how to bring out your full potential. Tackle your own root problems and strive to resolve your core issues. Look beyond the constrictions of your mental box and see the bigger picture, because in order to get someone else into reality, you first have to understand it yourself. He suggests making a list of your own challenges that's holding you back. Select a couple of them, figure out their root causes, and then make plans to solve them. So here I have an asterisk here, that objectivity is crucial in all problem solving, especially when the problems you're trying to solve are your own. Unless you can remove yourself and your ego from the picture, you're not going to be able to see the reality of the situation, right? The ego is huge and it's holding us back. Now, although you need to get into reality before you can try to solve other people's problems, solving other people's problems will bring you clarity, will increase your own clarity. I mean, surely, hopefully, about yourself, right? Once you experience success in external problem solving by helping others, you can apply that, and you can then apply that to yourself, the same methods which you have developed in helping others. And there's a few other examples here. And this is, I'm not going to say it's common, but let's just say it's a little bit more easier to relate to. So this woman goes off to New York to her best friend's wedding, and I guess what they call a bridesmaid gown, something very unique and special. Maybe it matches the colors of all the other girls. I don't know exactly what it is, but so either a child or whatever, somebody spilled some coffee on this beautiful dress, and she was about ready to go to the wedding. Now, what is going to be her attitude? Seriously, she spent, I don't know how many years building up this time for a vacation from her job, or she spent X amount of money, but it's her we'll call it her best friend, one of her best friend's wedding, and she came there to celebrate, to have a good time. And now, what is going to be her attitude? She's got a few choices. I mean, she could be late to the wedding, going to one of these places for 1 hour cleaning, spend a lot of money, dry cleaning, whatever it is. She could wear a different color, and then she'll be like, I don't know, maybe the bride will be pissed off or surprised, or people will be looking at her. I thought you were like her best friend, and you didn't even know what color to wear. I mean, all kinds of things can happen, or she could go. She can go to the wedding with the stain and just know that she's there to have a good time. And when people say, "Oh, what is that?" you should say, "Oh, no, it's nothing," and really feel like it's nothing, because the joy of spending that whatever a couple hours with her friend at her wedding, celebrating this joyous occasion, it's nothing. So what? Okay, maybe I'm a guy, so maybe I don't understand it, but this is the example he brings in the book, right? You have to make the decisions you make is right, develops your attitude, and the attitude you have is a decision that you made. And here's another example he wants to give, right? So let's say, how many people would be happy with $150,000 in their bank account? I know, almost everyone we know would be very happy. Okay, that's because you and me, that we would be happy. What about a guy who just lost $5 million? You know what? Why wouldn't he just be as happy as we would be with 150,000? Really? You could do a lot with 150. Didn't we just say that? I mean, $150,000 is a lot of money for us. So the guy just lost $5 million, and all he's got left is $150,000. You know what he can do? People have made $5 million with $150,000. So why does his attitude? It's an illusion. His ego. I was on top of the world. I had this, I had that, or everyone looked at me a certain way. Now I got nothing. You have nothing. You don't have nothing. You have $150,000 that all of us would kill for it.
Their perspective's been skewed.
We would be so happy.
Sure.
So we have to realize that that's our attitude, right? It's not objective reality. It's the ego. He writes here, like, if you decide, right, it's based on your decisions. The world's a mess and it's a drag to be here, then that's how you're going to live. That's how you're going to live. But if you decide life is good, it's a pleasure to be here, but we have some challenges to tackle, then that's how you're going to live. Now, I mentioned this before, and I'll mention it again. My mother, I asked her as a young child, I can't remember the age. I'm going to guess it was probably around 6 or 7 years old, just as curiosity. I asked her, what is heaven? What is hell? What is this, the afterlife? What happens after we die? What's it all about? And with such grace, and I'm obviously must have been well thought out for her as a Jewish mother, right? She said what is unbelievably so true. She said the world to come is an extension of this world, meaning what you make of this world. If you have a miserable life full of, whether it's crime or ignorance or complaints, that's what it's going to be for you over there. But if you do everything you can to make the best of this world, you're going to have an unbelievable time in the world to come. And it's such a Jewish concept. Okay, um, here's a box I put in a box, so I want to read it. Make the choice to live in reality. Remember, that's our topic. Standing up for reality, and embrace the beauty of existence, even if circumstances force you to wear a dirty outfit, right? When you see the ugliness in the world, you have two choices. You're going to either complain about it and do nothing, or undertake to clean it up and fix it, which is obviously such a Jewish concept. One of the things that we have decided, right, the Jewish world is, you ask any Jewish parent, they all want to have their kids have a better life than they did. And
Most parents of our generation do, yeah.
without getting into any politics, but apparently there is, certain attitude in certain urban areas, or certain, certainly non-Jew, where you won't find Jews, right? That I mean, people don't even know who their parents are. The parents just abandon their kids. I mean, there's just no family structure, no nuclear family structure, no idea of trying to give your kids a better life than you had. It's just a total abandonment.
For material things.
I don't know what to say about it, but okay. So you have two choices. You're either going to complain about it and do nothing, or you're going to undertake it and fix it up. It's all in your attitude. Don't sit there and say, I wish the world were different. It's not going to happen. You got to do something about it. I mean, there's so many Holocaust survivor stories where people said, if I survive this, I mean, it was hell. If I survive this, I'm going to make a difference. And so many Holocaust survivors, I don't know if that's even the word to use, but, people that experienced the Holocaust have gone on. And I know there's a lot of
impacted, huge, yeah.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of dysfunction. I know, trust me. I mean, I'm aware of that. I'm not trying to bring down this idea, but it destroyed people. But there are people that picked up their bootstraps, so to speak, and excelled where it's just miraculous
against adversity. Yeah,
yeah. So the beauty of life is that you can change the ugliness. Every situation can be approached in so many different ways, right? It's your decision which one to choose.
I often say, Rabbi, with most scenarios, you're faced with either to live with it or to deal with the scenario that comes your way. And when you're dealing with adversity, you either ask yourself, can I live with this? Or should I have to live with this? Or is it something I got to deal with? And you act responsibly.
Right. So the very end of this chapter, he discusses this idea of relative versus absolute truth. And he goes at length to describe the problem of today's generation. People taking, the university liberal arts education, right? That's like, who knows? Everything's relative. There's no absolute truth, right? So this is how he begins the idea. One of the greatest obstacles facing our generation is the prevalent notion there's no point in even seeking the truth, because there is no such thing as absolute truth. It's all relative, right? Everyone's right. It's just one opinion against another, right? And go on and on and on. But the truth is, there is absolute truth. If you believe there's no absolute reality, it actually leads to closed-mindedness, right? Some of these, I don't know what label to give them. I'm talking about the people on the left, far left, progressive, right? They say there's no point in examining wisdom or ideas if there's no real truth out there to discover. And he claims this is the scourge of today's typical university liberal arts education. And he quotes a professor, Alan Bloom. I think he passed away already. There's a book called The Closing of the American Mind. And he discusses these ideas. he does give an example, but I'm not going to go through it right now. But this is how he concludes this idea. We need to fight this insanity. Okay. Now, this is not political. I'm just talking about
Nope.
extremism
Call it
in
what it
that
is.
sense. Okay. But truth exists. For example, either there is a God or there is no God. Both cannot be true. Right. I mentioned about Rabbi Moti Berger. Is there a God? If there is a God, what difference does it make? And it makes a big hell of a difference. I use the word hell of a difference, right? Makes a hill of a beans. God does not start existing when you decide to believe in him, nor does he disappear when an atheist denies him. It's
Right.
absurd to think that the truth regarding his existence is relative. Either he's there and the atheist is making a mistake, or he's not there and the one who believes him is making a mistake. So who's right? This is where it comes down to. You have to search honestly and diligently, examine the evidence and all the relevant arguments, think things through, and decide where the truth lies. Our daily lives are full of experience that demonstrate our belief in an absolute truth. You're going to get somebody who says, I don't believe in absolute truth. You can pin him down so easily, and you'll realize, yeah, there actually is, comes to murder, this, that, and the other thing.
Yeah, they absolutely believe there's no absolute truth.
Right. There you go. Often in an argument, we feel that if the person we're talking to would be just a little bit more open-minded, he would see the truth. We only argue because we're convinced there's only one right way. How often will they argue because they believe their way is the right way, even though they say there is no absolute truth? Unbelievable. So this leads us into one of the ideas I spoke about at the beginning of, I think, the 48 ways, but it could have been at the time of the 6 constant mitzvahs, and that is what we call 5-finger clarity. Right? How do I know with absolute truth that I have 5 fingers on one hand? Right? I have. I'm looking at it, of course. That's how clear I have to be about everything. And that requires diligence, searching, a lot of prayer to Hashem to reveal to me the truth. But it takes my efforts. And therefore, that's really what we're saying. In other words, it's a way to acquire wisdom is to know there's an absolute truth and to try to figure it out, right? And that's it. That's where we're going to end today. I mean, I do have quite a few notes, but I think this is, I think I covered everything basically.
Well, it's so critical. It's so critical a point to live in reality. Yeah, so many places people they live in their own individual fantasy and their own world, and then it imposes on others. When you believe in falsehood, can you elaborate maybe on how that encroaches on others and more than just somebody's ideas? There are those out there that would just force incorrect thought, and it replicates and it causes mayhem and pandemonium and confusion and. Yeah.
So I will give a little bit of a boost for Jordan Peterson, meaning people should check out his videos, some of his books. I mean, there's a whole bunch of other people. I think he's the least controversial person, honestly. I mean, yeah, obviously he's involved in some aspects of controversy, but in my opinion, he just straight shooter, right? The least controversial. And I'm one of the best well-articulated people to discuss this idea. I will end with another idea. Two more things. Right? If you ask people, is it better to be happy or wealthy? If you had a choice, I would assume most people would say happy, but it would be like a toss-up, right? A lot of people can't figure that one out. Another idea, and this extends to it also could be quite controversial, but the Holocaust. God has told us he loves the Jewish people, and he says we're going to be around forever. So what's going on here? So he also says don't assimilate. He does not want us. He didn't want us to assimilate. And you know what was happening? I don't want to get into so much, but basically, and anti-Semitism has raised its head over and over throughout the generations. It's one of those things that actually keeps the Jews from assimilating. It's the Father that loves us so much that sometimes he, sets some reality that's uncomfortable. So that, there was, I think it's called Nuremberg laws, not the ones that came after, but
No, before.
before the
Yeah.
Holocaust, that it was Germany that said you're not allowed to marry Jews. See, it already says in our Torah the Jews are not allowed to marry non-Jews. But in Germany, I don't know if it was 65 or even higher, 65% intermarriage, which was huge. You didn't find in Poland, I think it was 3% or less, maybe closer to 1% of intermarriage.
Right.
The
Well, they had
anti-Semitism in
communities there,
Poland,
tight communities. Jewish
but
communities were
no, but it was
tight there.
also, it's true, but it was also due to a lot of anti-Semitism generations before that helped create those tighter communities. So you see, even within the darkness, remember we're saying standing up for reality, seeing it as not an illusion, knowing that, look, even as a result of the Holocaust, a lot of Jews have experienced anti-Semitism in different ways that were already seemingly fully assimilated, and yet there's something that shook the world and woke up the world. I mean, I have relatives based on going to Poland, they were totally secular and said, I'm only going to marry Jews and I'm only going to have Jewish children, as many as I possibly can. And totally secular. But something, had awakened them, and I call it to reality. But what's the real reality? The reality isn't you're worthless. The reality is, I love you, God's saying, and I want to keep you around forever. And if I have to make a little bit of a sacrifice in this case, but it's a wake up call. And that's the big Holocaust, but you've had pogroms, we've had anti Semitism, and we're having it today. And I'm just telling my Jewish friends out there, my Jewish brothers and sisters, that there's a reality and it's what you choose, right? It's your attitude and your choice, but you have to examine the evidence. And that's what I implore you to do. Okay, so that's it for
Beautiful,
tonight.
Rabbi. We need to live in reality, but we also need, Hashem's intervention so often, and we just really pray that this Hanukkah season, we hope that the Jewish people just have a sense of identity and come to understand how much they're loved, and we're just so thankful that they're starting to share the light of Torah on scale with the rest of the world, and we hope that it opens up more opportunities, specifically for the fulfillment of what Hashem has birthed them as a nation for, and that we get to the other side of the whole of the matter, and that His name be one, and the world come to understand that more than anything, that we all are interconnected at one level, and we can learn to love one another, and it's exciting stuff, and I think that's exactly what the message of wisdom continuously puts. But you're never going to get there unless you're living in reality, and be honest with yourselves. And if you're living in discomfort, be honest with yourself and adjust it, change it, do something to as a man, I've always found joy to be something that's escaped my hands often, always looking to do something else to be fulfilled. And in reality, I got to learn to have joy in the journey. And we've been at this course now for a while, and we got only about 7 more weeks to go. But as we were chatting earlier, we're not on next week, right, Rabbi? We're not doing part 42 next week because of Hanukkah.
The following week, that's correct.
All right, so it'll be 2 weeks from today before we're back with Beyond the Seven, and we're looking forward to going down that last stretch and finishing off that book. And then you also mentioned last week, you mentioned something called Talmud Devorah. You wanted to go into maybe down the road in the new year.
I'm seriously thinking, man. I looked at it. I looked at the Sefer again last few days. I'll make a decision soon. But if we're going to have to choose another Sefer
Direction,
anyway,
topic or something. Yeah.
So if there are certain chapters that I don't feel are fit to give over, I still think the concept in going through certain chapters would be. So so far that's the direction
Well,
we're leaning.
we trust your guidance as a rabbi, and I know that you're doing so much work there with Yibbeneh. And folks, you can find him on his website or his Facebook or YouTube page, Yibbeneh, or his website, yibbeneh.com. And we know that you're involved in so much giving there in Jerusalem. And I understand you'll be coming up with an annual drive soon. And we hope that people will consider supporting you and look forward to everything you got coming out in the near future. So, Rabbi, we're so thankful to Hashem for you sharing this course with us, and may we all learn to live in reality and adjust what needs to be adjusted to get rid of the fantasy, to get rid of the delusion. I even heard your message the other day when you were talking along those lines. The one message you had about the ger and the history, and that even the Hebrew people need to have that mindset, not to live in any illusion.
We are just as it says. This world is just a prusdor. Prusdor means it's the entranceway to the world to come. We are not to make a permanent dwelling here. We're supposed to be like a ger, as it was directed to Abraham, to Isaac, and this was I'll call it a mistake, that Jacob himself sought shalva, tranquility in this world. This world is not designed.
It's not the permanent dwelling.
Jordan Peterson will tell you all about this world is not for tranquility; it's for suffering, according to him. He still has a little bit of a Christian worldview, but nevertheless, he's a psychologist, so he's talking from a psychological point of view. But yes, it's for growing. Growth requires friction. I think I mentioned this in one of the other classes. It was a T-shirt they call safe spaces, right? So there's no growth in a safe space. Like, you cannot possibly grow. And that's what, unfortunately, we spoke about the universities. Many of the universities are just find the safest space just to not be, I don't know what the word
the
is.
Atmosphere for
not to have any challenges. No challenges, right? That's what universities used to be. It was to challenge your mind. And I don't know, whatever it is. I can't, but a yeshiva, that's all you find. It's a battle of ideas and challenges. And hopefully the universities will, come back around full swing. But anyway, in the meantime, so that's where we're at.
Right. All right. Well, we appreciate today's lesson, Rabbi. So we're not back we'll be back in 2 weeks. We will not be back with Beyond the Seven next week this time. And we wish you and all Israel, especially in Jerusalem, you guys have a happy Hanukkah. And we will miss you next week, Rabbi, but we look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks. So have a wonderful, wonderful Hanukkah, Rabbi. Bye for now.